Welcome to the Heart's Haven. Let the story begin. Poor girl walks 5 miles to school every day, until one day, a millionaire follows her and sees why. The first time anyone really noticed her, it wasn't because she asked for help, it was because she didn't. Every morning, just after sunrise, when the streets were still quiet and the air held that early chill, a small figure walked along the edge of Maple Avenue. No backpack with bright colors. No parent holding her hand. Just a little girl, thin jacket, worn sneakers, and a steady, determined pace that didn't match her age. Emily Parker was 8 years old, and she walked 5 miles to school. Not once, not occasionally, every single day. Cars passed her without slowing. People glanced, then looked away. In a city where everyone had somewhere to be, a quiet child walking alone simply blended into the background like a shadow no one claimed. But that morning, something shifted. Daniel Carter noticed. From the back seat of a black sedan that cost more than most homes on that street, he watched her through tinted glass. At first, she was just another blur in his routine, a flicker between emails, meetings, and numbers that never seemed to end. But then she stumbled. Not dramatically, not enough to cause a scene. Just a small misstep, her foot catching the uneven pavement, her body swaying for a second before she steadied herself and kept going. Daniel frowned. She didn't stop, didn't look around, didn't call out. She just kept walking. Something about that wasn't right. "Slow down," he said quietly to the driver. The car eased its speed, and for reasons he couldn't explain, not logic, not business, not anything he could put into numbers, Daniel kept watching her. She passed a row of houses with trimmed lawns, then another block where the sidewalks cracked and the paint peeled. Then a stretch with no houses at all, just a long road stretching ahead like it had no end. 5 miles? For a child. Daniel leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowing as if trying to understand a puzzle that didn't belong in his world. Why? The question settled into his chest, quiet but persistent. Why would a little girl walk this far? Every day, alone. She adjusted the strap of a small faded bag on her shoulder. Her fingers were red from the cold. Her step slowed for just a moment, just long enough for anyone else to stop, to rest, to give up. But she didn't. She kept going. And in that moment, something unfamiliar stirred inside Daniel Carter, a man who had built his entire life on control, distance, and detachment. Because this wasn't a problem he could solve with money. Not yet. This was something else. Something human. He looked at her again, really looked this time. At the way she held herself, at the silence around her, at the quiet strength that didn't ask to be seen. And for the first time in a long time, Daniel didn't look away. "Follow her," he said. The driver hesitated. "Sir?" Daniel's voice didn't change. "Just follow her." The car moved forward, slowly, carefully keeping distance. And as the city began to wake, as the sun climbed higher and the world grew louder, one man made a choice he didn't fully understand. He chose to stop. He chose to see. Because something about that little girl walking alone down a 5-mile road was about to change everything. Daniel Carter had everything most people spent their entire lives chasing. A glass-walled penthouse overlooking the city. A schedule so tight it left no room for silence. A company that moved markets with a single decision. His name appeared in magazines, on panels, in conversations that never included anything personal. From the outside, his life looked complete. From the inside, it felt quiet. Not peaceful quiet, not the kind you chose. The kind that followed you home. That morning had not been any different. It had started with numbers, like every other day, revenue projections, Investor calls, a board meeting already waiting for him by 9 o'clock. His assistant had sent 3 reminders before he even finished his first cup of coffee. Everything was moving, everything was working, except him. He had not planned to take that route through Maple Avenue. His driver had suggested it to avoid traffic, and Daniel had nodded without thinking. He rarely noticed the streets anymore. The city had become something he passed through, not something he belonged to. Until today. Until her. Now, as the car moved slowly behind the small figure ahead, the world outside the window felt different. Sharper. Closer. Unavoidable. Daniel shifted slightly in his seat, his eyes never leaving the girl. Emily kept walking with that same quiet determination, her steps small but steady. She did not look back. She did not seem to notice the car, or maybe she had simply learned not to expect anything from the ones that passed by. That thought settled heavier than he expected. "Do you see her often?" Daniel asked, his voice calm but focused. The driver glanced in the rearview mirror. "I think I have, sir. Same time most mornings. She is always walking." Always. Daniel leaned back, absorbing that single word. Always meant this was not a one-time situation, not a missed ride, not a temporary problem. This was her life. The car continued at a careful distance. The early sunlight stretched across the road, casting long shadows that moved with her. She adjusted her bag again, pulling it closer to her chest as the wind picked up. Her jacket was too thin for the weather. Anyone could see that. But no one had stopped. Daniel's jaw tightened slightly, though he could not have said why. He had seen hardship before. He had funded charities, written checks, sat through galas where stories like this were told between courses of expensive meals. He had nodded at the right moments, contributed at the right time, and returned to his world unchanged. This was different, because this time there was no stage, no speech, no distance, just a little girl walking 5 miles alone, in real time, right in front of him. And he could not look away. "Sir, we will be late for the meeting," the driver said gently. Daniel did not respond right away. His eyes remained fixed on Emily as she crossed another intersection, waiting patiently for the light, her small figure dwarfed by the city waking up around her. Late. The word used to matter. Now it felt irrelevant. For the first time in years, something outside of his carefully constructed world was asking for his attention. Not loudly, not urgently. Just quietly, persistently. "Cancel it," Daniel said finally. The driver blinked. "Sir, the meeting. Reschedule it." There was a brief pause, the kind that usually never existed in Daniel Carter's world. "Yes, sir," the driver replied. The car kept moving. Ahead of them, Emily reached a long stretch of road with no sidewalks, just gravel, grass, and distance. She hesitated for half a second, glancing at the narrow shoulder, then stepped forward anyway. Careful, focused, used to it. Daniel felt something shift again, deeper this time. This was no longer curiosity. This was concern. He leaned forward slightly, his voice lower now, more certain. "Stay with her." And as the city disappeared behind them and the road stretched farther into places most people never noticed, Daniel Carter made a quiet decision. He was not going to let this remain a question. Today, he was going to find the answer. The road stretched longer than it should have for a child. Gravel crunched softly beneath Emily's worn sneakers as she moved along the narrow shoulder, her small figure framed by open space on both sides. No sidewalks, no streetlights. Just a thin line between the pavement and the grass, like the world had not been built for someone her size to walk through it. The car followed at a distance. Slow, careful, quiet. Inside, Daniel Carter watched without speaking. At first, he had expected her to turn, to stop at a corner, meet a friend, or reach a bus stop that would explain everything. But she did not. She kept going. 5 miles was no longer an estimate. It was becoming real, measured in every step she took. "She does this every day?" Daniel asked again, softer this time. "Yes, sir," the driver replied. "At least from what I have seen." Daniel nodded slightly, though his eyes never left the road ahead. Emily slowed for a moment, her shoulders rising and falling as she caught her breath. The morning air had warmed just enough to take the edge off the cold, but not enough to ease the strain of the distance. She pressed her lips together, steadying herself, then continued. No complaints, no hesitation. Just quiet persistence. Daniel felt it again, that unfamiliar pull in his chest. Not pity, not exactly. Something closer to respect. But beneath that, something heavier. Why would she have to do this? The question returned, stronger now. Up ahead, the road curved gently toward a cluster of older houses. Paint faded, roofs worn. The kind of neighborhood that did not appear in brochures or business reports. Emily turned there. Not toward a school. Toward the houses. Daniel leaned forward, his focus sharpening. "Slow down," he said. The car eased further back as she approached one of the smallest homes on the street. The porch sagged slightly. The windows were covered with thin curtains that barely held their shape. It was quiet. Too quiet for a place where a child lived. Emily stepped onto the porch and paused. For the first time since Daniel had seen her, she stopped completely. She reached into her small bag and carefully pulled something out. A folded paper. A small container. She held them for a second, like they mattered more than anything else she carried. Then she opened the door and disappeared inside. Daniel felt the moment settle around him. This was not just a long walk to school. This was something else. "Pull over," he said. The car came to a quiet stop along the side of the road. Daniel did not move right away. He watched the door, half expecting her to come back out immediately and continue on her way. But she did not. Minutes passed. The world around them remained still. A distant dog barked. A breeze moved through the trees. The city felt far away now, like something from another life. Daniel's hand rested against the door handle, but he did not open it yet. He was thinking. About the way she had held that small container. About the way she had not rushed. About the fact that she had walked miles before even reaching wherever she was truly meant to go. "She is not just going to school," he said quietly. The driver did not answer. He did not need to. Daniel exhaled slowly, his gaze still fixed on the house. Whatever was inside that door, that was the reason. And for the first time since this morning began, Daniel Carter understood something with complete clarity. He was not following her anymore out of curiosity. He was here because something was not right. And he was about to find out what it was. Daniel Carter stepped out of the car slowly, as if moving too fast might break something fragile in the moment. The air felt different here, quieter. Still. No passing traffic, no distant sirens, just the faint rustle of leaves and the soft creak of that worn wooden porch ahead. He closed the car door gently behind him, his polished shoes now standing on uneven gravel instead of marble floors. For a second, he hesitated. Not because he was unsure of what to do, but because something about this place demanded a different kind of presence. Less control. More care. He walked toward the house, each step slower than the last. Up close, the details became impossible to ignore. The chipped paint along the door frame, the small cracks in the window glass. A mailbox that leaned slightly to one side, as if it had given up standing straight. This was where she had come first. Before school. Before anything else. Daniel reached the bottom of the porch steps and paused. From inside, there was no noise, no television, no movement, just silence. Then, a sound. Soft, faint. A voice. Emily. He could not make out every word, but the tone was unmistakable, gentle, careful, the way someone speaks when they are trying not to worry another person. Daniel stepped closer, stopping just beside the door. It was not fully closed, just enough that a sliver of the inside could be seen through the narrow gap. And without meaning to, he looked. The room inside was small, dim. A single lamp cast a warm but weak glow across worn furniture that had clearly been there for years. Nothing matched. Nothing was new. But it was clean, carefully kept. Emily stood near a couch that had been turned into a bed. Her small frame moved with quiet purpose as she placed the container she had carried onto a nearby table. "Mom, I brought breakfast," she said softly. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. On the couch, a woman lay resting, covered with a thin blanket. Her face looked tired, pale, but peaceful in a way that came from exhaustion rather than rest. She did not sit up. She did not reach for the food. Emily did not seem surprised. She moved closer, kneeling beside her, adjusting the blanket gently, as if it were something fragile. "I will be back after school," Emily continued, her voice steady, practiced. "I left water right here, okay? And I warmed up the soup from last night. You just have to eat a little." There was no response. Not because there was anything wrong, but because this was normal for them. Daniel swallowed hard, his hand resting lightly against the doorframe as he stood there, unseen. 5 miles. She had walked 5 miles, not just to get to school, but after making sure someone else was taken care of first. Emily reached for a small note and placed it beside the container. Her handwriting, neat but simple, filled the page. A message, instructions, comfort, things a child should never have to think about. And yet, she did. She leaned down slightly, brushing a strand of hair away from her mother's face with a tenderness that felt far too old for her 8 years. "I will hurry home," she whispered. Daniel closed his eyes for a brief second. That was it. That was the reason. Not attention, not help. Responsibility. Love. He stepped back from the door slowly, careful not to make a sound. His mind, usually so quick, so decisive, had gone completely still. This was not a situation he could observe from a distance anymore. This was real, and it was happening right here, every single day. Daniel turned slightly, looking back toward the road they had followed. 5 miles. She would walk it again. After this. After making sure everything here was okay. He exhaled slowly, a decision forming not from logic, not from obligation, but from something deeper, something human. And for the first time in a very long time, Daniel Carter did not think about what was expected of him. He thought about what was right. Emily stepped back from the couch, her small hand lingering for just a second on the edge of the blanket, as if she could leave warmth behind. Then she stood. No hesitation, no lingering sadness. Just a quiet breath and readiness. She picked up her bag again, slipping the worn strap over her shoulder with practiced ease. Her eyes moved across the room one last time, checking everything the way someone much older would. Water within reach. Food set out. Note placed carefully. Everything in order. "Okay," she whispered softly, more to herself than anyone else. Then she turned toward the door. Daniel moved back instinctively, stepping off the porch just as it creaked under her light footsteps. He did not want to startle her. Not yet. Not like this. The door opened. Emily stepped out into the morning light, pulling it closed behind her with care, making sure it latched properly. For a moment, she stood there, facing the quiet street, her expression unreadable. Then, just like before, she started walking. Same direction, same pace. As if the last 10 minutes had not just carried the weight of an entire life. Daniel watched her from a distance, something inside him shifting deeper now, settling into a place that would not let go. This was not a single moment of hardship. This was routine. This was responsibility carried on small shoulders, day after day, without recognition, without relief. He glanced back at the house, then at her, then back again. The contrast was impossible to ignore. A child who should have been worrying about homework and friends, instead organizing meals, leaving notes, and walking miles alone. Daniel's hand tightened slightly at his side. For years, he had believed that understanding a problem meant analyzing it from afar. That distance created clarity, that emotion complicated decisions. But standing here now, watching Emily disappear slowly down that long road again, distance felt like avoidance. And clarity. Clarity felt like this. "She does all of that before school," he said quietly, almost to himself. The driver, still by the car, nodded once. "Looks that way, sir." Daniel exhaled slowly, his gaze following her smaller and smaller figure. There was no dramatic cry for help, no moment that demanded attention, just quiet endurance. And somehow that made it harder to ignore. He took a step forward, then another, not rushing, not calling out, just closing the distance, because watching was no longer enough. Not after what he had seen. Emily adjusted her bag again as she walked, her steps steady but slower now, the earlier effort beginning to show. The road ahead stretched long and empty, just like before. But this time, she was not alone. Daniel Carter followed, not as an observer anymore, but as someone who had made a decision he could not undo. He did not know exactly what he was going to say. He did not know how she would react. All he knew was this: a line had been crossed. Not by her, but by him. Because once you truly see someone, you do not get to pretend you did not. And today, he had seen everything. Emily had walked nearly another half-mile before she noticed him. At first, it was just a feeling. The kind you get when something in your routine shifts ever so slightly. The rhythm of her steps stayed the same, but her shoulders tightened just a little. Her grip on the strap of her bag grew firmer. Then she slowed, just enough to listen. Daniel adjusted his pace behind her, careful not to seem sudden or threatening. He kept a respectful distance, his hands visible, his posture calm. This was not a boardroom. There was no script here. Only trust. And trust, he knew, could not be rushed. "Hey," he said gently. His voice carried just enough to reach her without startling. Emily stopped. Not abruptly, not afraid, but cautious. She turned slowly, her eyes lifting to meet his for the first time. Up close, they were clearer than he expected. Blue, but not bright. Tired in a way that did not belong to a child. She did not speak. She just looked at him. Measuring. Daniel gave a small, careful nod, as if introducing himself without stepping too far into her space. "My name is Daniel," he said. "I noticed you walking." Still nothing. Emily's gaze shifted briefly past him, toward the empty road, then back again. She did not run. She did not move closer either. She stayed exactly where she was, balanced between leaving and listening. "That is a long walk," Daniel continued, keeping his voice soft, steady. 5 miles is not easy, even for adults." A flicker crossed her face, not surprise. Recognition. "You counted?" she asked quietly. Her voice was small, but it carried a strength he had already seen. Daniel allowed a faint, almost uncertain smile. "I followed the road." Emily studied him again, this time longer. "Why?" she asked. It was not a fearful question. It was a direct one, and it landed heavier than anything he had been asked in years. "Why?" Daniel paused, not because he did not have an answer, but because the truth felt unfamiliar on his tongue. "I saw you this morning," he said, "and I could not stop thinking about it." Emily's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, but in careful thought. "I am fine," she said after a moment. "I do this every day." There was no complaint in her voice, no request, just a statement. Daniel nodded slowly. "I can see that." A small breeze moved between them, lifting a strand of her hair before it settled again. The road remained quiet, stretching endlessly behind her. "You should not have to," he added gently. That was the moment something shifted. Not visibly, not dramatically, but in the way Emily's expression softened, just a fraction, as if a thought had entered her mind that she had not allowed before. She looked down briefly, her shoe pressing lightly into the gravel. "Someone has to," she said. Simple, final. Daniel felt that sentence settle deep. Not defensive, not sad, just true. He took a careful step closer, still leaving space between them. "What is your name?" he asked. She hesitated. Then, quietly, "Emily." He nodded. "Emily." For a second, neither of them spoke. Two completely different worlds standing on the same empty road. And yet, somehow, connected. Daniel glanced down at her shoes, the worn edges, the thin soles that had carried her farther than they ever should have. Then back at her. "Can I walk with you?" he asked. Emily looked at him again, searching his face for something she could trust. The silence stretched. Then, slowly, she nodded. Just once. And together, without another word, they turned toward the long road ahead. This time, she did not walk it alone. They walked side by side in silence for a while. Not the kind of silence that felt awkward. The kind that felt careful, measured. Emily kept her pace steady, her eyes forward, as if she had already decided that this moment would not change her routine. Her steps remained small but consistent, each one placed with the same quiet determination Daniel had noticed from the beginning. Daniel adjusted to match her rhythm. No rushing, no leading, just walking with her. The road stretched ahead, long and familiar to her, unfamiliar to him. Gravel shifted beneath his polished shoes, a subtle reminder of how far outside his world he had stepped. "How long have you been doing this?" he asked gently. Emily did not look at him. "Since the bus stopped coming." Daniel frowned slightly. "The bus?" She nodded. "They changed the route. It does not come near our house anymore." There was no frustration in her voice. No complaint. Just fact. "And there is no one who can drive you?" he asked. Emily shook her head. "My mum cannot leave the house." Daniel already knew that, but hearing her say it made it heavier. "And no one else?" he asked carefully. She hesitated this time. Just a second. Then she shook her head again. "No." The word lingered between them. No relatives, no neighbors stepping in, no system catching what had clearly been falling for a long time. Daniel looked ahead, his jaw tightening slightly. This was not just about distance anymore. This was about absence. Emily adjusted her bag again, her small fingers gripping the strap as a gust of wind passed through. "I do not mind," she added quietly, almost as if she needed to say it. "I leave early. I get there on time." Daniel glanced down at her, noticing the way she lifted her chin just a little as she spoke. Pride, not in the situation, but in handling it. "You should not have to prove that," he said softly. Emily did not respond right away. Her steps slowed for just a moment, then picked back up. "I have to make sure she is okay first," she said. Daniel nodded. "I know." They continued walking. A car passed in the distance, but it did not slow. The world kept moving around them, unaware of the quiet conversation happening on the side of that long road. Daniel exhaled slowly, his mind moving through possibilities, solutions, responsibilities. For years, he had been trained to assess problems quickly, to fix them efficiently. But this was not a business problem. This was a life. And it did not come with a clean solution. "If someone could help," he began carefully, "would you want that?" Emily stopped walking. This time, fully. She turned to face him, her expression no longer neutral. It was guarded, not afraid, but protective. "Help how?" she asked. Daniel paused, because he realized something in that moment. Help, to him, meant resources, options, change. But to her, help could mean risk, disruption, or worse, being separated from the one person she was holding everything together for. "I would not do anything you do not want," he said, his voice steady, sincere. "I just want to understand what you need." Emily studied him closely, searching for something deeper than words. The wind moved softly around them, carrying the quiet weight of the moment. "I need to get to school," she said finally, "and I need to get back home." Simple, clear, uncomplicated. Daniel nodded slowly. Of course. That was her world. That was her priority. Not comfort, not convenience. Responsibility. He looked down the road ahead, then back at her. And in that moment, the conflict settled fully into place. Because helping her would not be as simple as stepping in. It would mean stepping into her world, without breaking it. And Daniel Carter knew, for the first time in a very long time, that this was going to require more than just good intentions. They started walking again. This time, the silence between them felt different. Not distant, not uncertain, just understood. Daniel kept his pace aligned with Emily's, careful not to step ahead, careful not to fall behind. The road stretched forward, long and familiar to her, but for the first time, it no longer felt like something she had to face alone. A school building appeared faintly in the distance. Still far, but closer than before. "You are going to be late," Daniel said gently. Emily shook her head. "I leave early, so I am not." There was that quiet pride again. Prepared. Responsible. Daniel nodded, though his eyes drifted down briefly to her shoes again. The soles were worn thin, edges uneven from miles of walking. They had carried her farther than they ever should have. He looked ahead, thinking, not in numbers, not in strategies, but in possibilities. "Emily," he said after a moment, his tone careful, "what if you did not have to walk all 5 miles every day?" She did not answer right away. Her steps slowed slightly. "I would still have to go home," she said. Daniel understood what she meant. This was not just about getting to school. It was about getting back. Back to that small house. Back to her mother. Back to everything she was holding together. "I know," he said, "and you would." She looked at him then, her expression searching. "You cannot move my house," she said simply. Daniel let out a soft breath, almost a quiet smile. "No," he said, "but maybe I can make the road shorter." Emily frowned slightly, trying to understand. Daniel gestured gently back toward where the car had been following them. "I have a driver," he explained. "He could take you to school and bring you home after." The words settled between them. Simple, clear, but not easy. Emily stopped walking again. Her eyes shifted toward the road behind them, then back to him. "Every day?" she asked. Daniel nodded. "If you want." She looked down, her fingers tightening slightly around the strap of her bag. There was no excitement in her expression, no immediate relief, just careful thought. "Would I still get to go home first?" she asked. Daniel did not hesitate. "Yes." "And after school?" "Yes." Her shoulders lowered just a fraction. The tension eased, just enough. She looked ahead again, toward the distant school, then back at him. "You would not take me somewhere else?" she asked quietly. The question landed deeper than anything else she had said. Daniel met her gaze, steady and clear. "No," he said. "I would only take you where you need to go." Emily held his eyes for a moment longer. Then, slowly, she nodded. Not a big gesture, not dramatic. Just a small, quiet agreement. "Okay," she said. And in that single word, something shifted. Not just in her day, but in both of their lives. Because the road ahead had not disappeared. It was still there. Still long. Still real. But now, it was no longer something she had to carry alone. The car arrived the next morning at exactly the same time Emily would have stepped onto the road. But this time, she did not. She stood at the edge of the porch, her small hand resting on the doorframe, as if she needed to feel something solid before stepping into something new. Behind her, inside the quiet house, everything had been prepared just like always. Water within reach. Food set carefully. A note placed where it could be seen. Nothing had changed in her world. Except the road. Daniel stood a few steps away, not too close, not too far. He did not rush her. He did not speak. He simply waited. Because he understood now. This was not about offering help. This was about earning trust. Emily looked toward the car, then back at him. "You will bring me back?" she asked. Daniel nodded. "Every day." She held his gaze for a moment longer, searching for something deeper than a promise. Then she stepped forward. Slowly, carefully. The driver opened the door, and for a brief second, Emily hesitated again, her eyes dropping to her shoes. The same worn pair. The ones that had carried her 5 miles, day after day. Daniel noticed. Without a word, he reached into the car and gently placed a small box on the seat beside her. Emily looked at it, confused. "You do not have to open it now," he said softly. "Just when you are ready." She nodded, still unsure, and climbed into the seat. The door closed quietly. And for the first time in a long time, the road remained empty. As the car pulled away, Emily sat still, her hands resting in her lap, the small box beside her. After a moment, curiosity won. She opened it carefully. Inside, a new pair of shoes. Simple, comfortable, strong enough to last. Not flashy, not overwhelming. Just what she needed. Her fingers brushed lightly over them, as if she was not sure they were real. Then she looked out the window. The road passed by, mile after mile, but this time she was not walking it. Not alone. Daniel sat in the front, his gaze forward, but his expression had changed. The city looked different now, not because it had changed, but because he had. That afternoon, the car returned her home. Right on time, just like he promised. Emily stepped out, holding the box close, then turned back toward him. "Thank you," she said. 2 simple words. But this time, they carried something more. Not just gratitude. Relief. Daniel gave a small nod. "You are not alone anymore," he said gently. Emily did not answer right away. She just smiled. A small, quiet smile. The kind that does not ask for anything, because it finally feels safe. And as she walked back into that small house, something invisible but undeniable had changed. Not everything. Not all at once. But enough. Because sometimes, it is not about saving someone. It is about stopping long enough to see them. And in that moment, choosing not to look away. Because true wealth was never the car, the suit, or the city skyline. It was this: the choice to care, the courage to stay, and the quiet promise that no one has to walk 5 miles alone again.